queen, and I am the rook. You are the fire, and I burn like a book. Don't know how this one ends till I die, and the honest part of reliable is the lie. The greater the power, the more the abuse. You are the hand, I worship the bruise. If romance is dead, I guess I'm a necrophiliac. But every god needs a sacrifice. I am the cross and you are the Christ. So I drink.
Beep beep children! This is Mother's Mayhem, an extreme horror podcast. Christina is otherwise engaged this weekend. So I have another very special guest co-host with me. This is Rachel Schomer. Rachel! Welcome to the shit show.
I'm super happy to be in the shit show, and it's already a shit show.
It is, just so you all know, things are really going super great for us so far. Thank you for asking. And so we expect this to just be to go incredibly well. We've had no bad omens or anything of the sort so far at all.
No bad omens. No.
Wow. And it just keeps getting better and better.
Marian did not just spill an entire drink into her bedside cabinet.
No. No, I didn't. I currently have all the contents of my bedside drawer on the floor on a paper towel. Well, my friend, you may have seen Rachel on TikTok and Instagram as at Jim and Genres. But if you are a member of our mom Facebook group, you already know our dear Rachel because she was one of our earliest super fans. And because she showed us even the slightest little modicum of affection, we immediately absorbed her into our boss crew and forced her to be our group admin. Rachel can totally speak to why you should never make eye contact with either myself or Christina, because as soon as you do, we're like, friend? Is it friend?
That's a little bit how it went. I was like watching all the stuff, commenting on YouTube, and then also I was like, hey, do you want to be part of this? And I'm like, yeah. Also, yeah. But like
I remember the first time we messaged, you were like, I can't believe I'm talking to you. And I was like, why? You're weird. I'm just some lady.
But you're not to those of us in the community.
See, that's funny to me. But I say the same thing to the authors, because the authors that we talk to, they're like, well, I'm just a person. And I was like, you're not. Like, to us, you're not. You're like this thing.
Yes.
And then Rachel got to know the real us, and it was like, wow. They really are like that. I thought this was just like personas, but holy shit.
Dude, I for real, like, I thought you I love that that's like your real laugh, and you're really like, but I thought you were putting that on. But no, you're really just like a genuinely light person.
I get in trouble for it all the time. It does me no justice. Like, my entire life, I've gotten in trouble for this stupid fucking overly loud laugh. And there's nothing I can do about it. It literally just comes out of me. And most of the time, it's either that I'm overly excited about what it is we're laughing about, and I think it's like the funniest damn thing I've ever heard, or I'm horrifically anxious. Yeah. And that's why it happens. but it has been the bane of my existence since I was small. So, yay. Well, this is a pretty exciting day for me because the incredible Paula Ashe is going to be here to sit crooked and talk straight with us. And I am a diehard Paula Ashe fangirl. But when it was established that Christina wasn't going to be available for this one, there was only one person that I could imagine putting in her place for this particular interview. And that was Rachel. Rachel. I'm gonna let you talk about Paula Ashe because I think when you start talking about her, they will understand why you were the first person that I thought of for this one.
Oh, okay. So my first introduction to Paula was reading We Are Here to Hurt Each Other. And like instantly, it wasn't just like words on a page. Like a lot of horror is like, it's words on a page. And I love that type of horror. Don't get me wrong. Like I read it all the time and I use my imagination.
Yeah.
Paula writes like her imagination is on the page. It like comes to life. It's like poetry. I don't know. It's like poetry, but in prose. I can't articulate like how beautifully she writes. And it's about like the most horrible things.
Yes.
So it's this crazy dichotomy between like beautiful words and horrendous like imagery. And I love it.
Yeah. The elegance and the eloquence. And it's just almost lyrical, poetic.
Yes.
She reminds me a lot of Eric LaRocca. Like I put them on the shelf together because they are very similar in that stylistic way. And I have a way of describing it that I wanted to share with her, so I don't want to like ruin that whole thought, but it's almost like you're walking through one of her dreams, right?
Yes.
Because the way that they write and the way they put these words down on paper, it feels like a dream. Like there's this, I don't want to call it a fogginess because it's very clear, but there's that, it feels like there's that dreamlike veil over everything because of how elegant and eloquent everything is. So, oh my God. Yeah.
Do you know who else kind of writes like that I just have to like shout out? Natasha Sinclair is another one. Like
God, yes.
Her and Paula and Eric, like I seriously, like the three of them are like, it's so beautiful.
Oh, I know. And Natasha is, well, you know what? The three of them all together, that's the kind of people that they are inside their core too. Like they literally put, I don't know. I might be making assumptions, but it feels like they take a piece of themselves and their personality and they're just like rip it out of their bodies and they like plop it down on the page and they're like, here you go. Take it or leave it.
For real. For real. And like, I'm going to say this and it's going to get me into trouble, but I read, what is the one that LaRocca came out with, this We Can Never Leave This Place? And I didn't love it, but I loved the way he wrote so much that I like instantly went out and bought like a whole bunch more of his books. Because I was like, this story might not have like resonated with me the way it did with you, but it was so gorgeous that I was like, I need more.
I know. Well, you know, he also did We've Lost a Lot of Blood, or You've Lost a Lot of Blood this year. His vibe this year has been a little bit more bizarro, like speculative bizarro, and I love bizarro. And I thought that You've Lost a Lot of Blood was fascinating, but at the same time, there were people who were like, "That's his best one yet," and I'm like, it was all right. Like it was good. I would never say it was not good because again, amazingly written. The format is cool. The story was interesting, but if I had to put it on scales with We Can Never Leave This Place, oh, the difference. Because for me, we can never leave this place was just like, oh, oh my God. Oh my God. And now I just got They Were Here Before Us. His newest one that's coming out. Oh my God. I read the first paragraph and my jaw was on the floor. So the first paragraph, and I don't want to give spoilers to y'all, but I'm setting this book up, and what y'all need to, like, if this doesn't sell you, I don't know what else will. The first line is something like, I knew the moment I first met her that I loved her. And it's about this creature's connection with this female, this girl. The creature that is speaking is an insect, and the girl is a corpse. And it talks about how she is its home and its safe place, and how it sustains her and it fills them with love. And it takes this relationship of this horrible thing that we expect, insects on a rotting corpse. And you're like, oh my God, that's absolutely disgusting. That's gross. And then he humanizes this insect to the point where the insect is like, but this human who you see decomposing is like my safe space, my everything, my source of love. And I was just like, holy fucking shit. Oh my God.
I'm gonna have to read that.
Oh my God. I literally put the thing down and went straight to my messages, and I was like, I just read through the first paragraph and a half and I'm already done. I'm done. Like, what the hell? This is genius. So if that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will, because oh my God. And that's just the first paragraph and a half, y'all.
See, but that's just what they do. Like, that's the same with like, We Are Here to Hurt Each Other. Like, I read the first story is like a page and a half, right? And it kind of sets up the whole book. Mm-hmm. And I got through that, and I literally just sat there with like my mouth open for a hot minute, and I was like, okay, like, where is this gonna go? And then I read the next one, and like I was like, okay, this is going into, right now, this is my third like top book for the year. Like, I already have two that I know are gonna go in my favorites for all of the year. This one's going number 3. And
that one is number 2 for me, and it will not be dislodged. It won't be. It won't. Because I found my TikTok that I did for my very first review on We Are Here to Hurt Each Other, and I forgot that. But if I hadn't even finished the book, I got through half of the book and immediately messaged Paula directly and said, this is the best book I've ever read. And I hadn't even finished it.
I mean, honestly, I think I messaged you and Christina like a couple stories in, and was basically just like, because again, this is another book that I picked up because of you guys. You're trouble, seriously. I like every episode I watch, I'm like taking notes, like, what do I need to go buy now? Literally, like, my Amazon cart just fills up as the episode goes on. Like, so my husband would like to thank you for that.
Oh yeah, well, misery loves company, because you watch our YouTube videos, so you see me every episode. Authors are talking, and I'm like, God damn it, adding books to my TV.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, it's totally worth it, because then I get to read, like, I don't know if it's a book I ever would have like picked up on my own, because I'm just like, I'm kind of newish to like horror, and especially like, indie horror and whatever. And there are just like so many big names out there that it's like, I want to read all the Volpes and the Beauregards and the Bercies. And then I don't know, but I was really like, I'm always looking for like women authors, right? Like I want to read women. I want to read women. Like that's who I want to support. And then you guys had Paula on, and then you talked about the book, and I was like, all right, I have to read this. Um, and so, I have to thank you guys for that. Cause yeah, you guys, like, honestly, I have to thank you guys, you and Christina both, so much for like opening my eyes to like
Oh,
a whole different like genre kind of, and like understanding like how to really read horror. Like I know Christina likes to call herself a cunt canoe for being so open and like so like people don't know how to read horror, and I don't think I did until I started like interacting with you guys and watching watching you guys on YouTube, and then I'm like, oh shit, I am surface level reading this. So because of Christina, I now like deeply read horror.
yes. Well, there's so much more to it. And that's actually something I think both of us wanted to talk to Paula about today, because Paula is one of those authors like Eric
Yes.
Chandler, Matthew Cash, Maddie Bob Okay, so y'all, Matthew Cash, you need to go to Amazon, you need to go to Godless, you need to buy everything he has ever written, because if you want horror that speaks from the human psyche, you need Matthew Cash in your life. One of the best authors out there. I had posted on the group today about my ride or dies, and my top three were, of course, Eric, Paula, and Dan Volpe. But I would put Matthew Cash right at number 4. Matthew Cash, Kevin Sweeney, and Ashe Eric Moore. They round out my top 6, because Matthew Cash writes from the perspective of someone who has lived that journey through mental health, and he has this amazing way of exploring it. He's incredible. But they take I feel like that's where real human horror comes from, is what's going on inside of our own heads.
Yes.
Which is generated from the real world around us and our environmental upbringing and all that sociological, sociocultural stuff that makes us who we are. So, and they really get in there. And so if you're the kind of person who doesn't mind going into that space, then these books, when you're reading them, you're just like, oh my God, oh my God.
Well, and show me a horror fan who doesn't have like a buttload of trauma in their past, and like that's why we read it. Like,
Yes. Well, the afterword for we are here to hurt each other. If you read the afterword for that, Paula talks about how we live in a world of chaos and horror. And some people come to horror for entertainment, and other people come to horror for solace.
yeah,
And if that ain't the fucking truth, because it's just that prime example. Horror is so subjective. We all come to this genre for our own personal, unique, and special reasons, and there's a tribe of people who are like, just give me the goriest shit you got. I just want to live that surreal, absurd, ridiculous, ultra violent life. And then the rest, and we love it too, but then there's those of us, you put those like the ideological horror in front of us, and our brains explode. We're like, holy shit, this is the best thing I ever read. So it's a beautiful genre, because there's something out there for everybody, but it makes you feel, no matter what, you're gonna feel. Oh God, I love it. Oh,
like
I love it.
Sometimes I just want good bloody fun, and that's like Ashe Erickmore. Like I just want to read.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes.
Ashe and Judith Sonnet have become like my go-tos. Aaron Beauregard, I love you so much, and I own every book that you have published now. I have them all, and I love them. But right now, if I want bloody good fun,
yes,
I'm immediately going to Ashe Erickmore and Judith Sonnet, because
oh my God, yes.
Well, there's something very unique about Paula too, because Paula actually is a university professor. So she works in higher education. And I believe she teaches like gender studies, humanities, and but she of course is an author of dark fiction. Now Paula, differently from any of the other authors we have had thus far, has only written in short fiction format.
Yes.
She has no novellas. She has no novelettes. She has no full-length novels. She only has put out work. I believe she might have some stuff in the trunk that's longer, but what she has put out to us is only short fiction. Now, I love short fiction because of the way my brain works, but she has a way of making you process so much in a short piece of work that it's practically like mind boggling. And like going back to that concept of sometimes I just want bloody good fun, and you go to Godless and you download a short story from like Simon and Sean, so I'm McCarty and a Hawker, and I'm like, I'm gonna read this. It's gonna be the most offensive shit I've ever seen. It's gonna be absurd. It's gonna be disgusting. It's gonna be ultra violent and gory, and I'm gonna have a blast, and it's gonna be over in 25 pages. Woo! That was a great roller coaster ride. And then you have somebody like Paula who in less than 20 pages can make you question yourself as a parent and what your place in the world is and how you're raising your children. So it's like most of her work hasn't even that We Are Here to Hurt Each Other is her only single author collection. Everything else she's done, she has like 15 other things out. And I think they're all just anthology contributions.
And a lot of them I feel like are stories that are also in We Are Here to Hurt Each Other. Like I kind of did some background work and saw that some of like oh God, there's one in particular that I can't remember the name of, but like the mother of all evil or something like that. That's one of her.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that one today.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that one.
That one blew my mind, and I'm not a parent, and it blew my mind.
Oh, I have so many thoughts, and I want to run them by her because holy shit. Yes. Did you read Jacqueline Laughs in the Gaslight?
Yes. Let me
Her take on Jack the Ripper, the Jack the Ripper story.
Yes.
Oh my God. Now, first of all, can we talk about how great that title is? Jacqueline Laughs in the Gaslight. Oh my God. But and I don't want to say anything else because if y'all can go find this story, you gotta go find this story. It's so good. She's so good. God, by the time she gets here, if she listens to this episode, she'll be like, I don't even know why y'all brought me in there. You said everything there was to me.
There's nothing else for me to talk about.
Well, we have about 15 minutes until she's expecting a link from us. The people get to hear me rant and rave about my favorite reads every episode. So I want you to take this opportunity. Last week, Dustin shared his faves from 2022 so far. Tell the children, what have been your favorite books of the year so far? What have you been loving?
Well, obviously, We Are Here to Hurt Each Other. That's up there. For all the reasons that we just touched on and more. But other than that, and I'm a little bit behind, so I know like some of these books were like big in 2021 or whatever, but I did bring them here. So this would be my number one, Left to You by Mr. Daniel J. Volpe. My grandpa actually survived Auschwitz during World War II.
Holy crap, Rachel.
Yeah,
what a legacy.
So reading this was weirdly like the parts that were like obviously horror because it's terrible things that like legitimately happen to people, but not like so much the actual like story. So like the concentration camp parts of this, it's like a lot of like what we heard from my grandpa. And I love that he did it. Like he presented something so terrible without being like gratuitous about it. Which I know he said like that
Doesn't
was,
feel exploitative, does it?
it doesn't,
No.
no. So I loved that one. And
Did you
then
tell him that? Have you shared that with him?
I did, but I think it's
Good.
before he like, I think it's before he like knew who I was. Like now we harass each other all of the time, especially about his crappy, crappy taste in beer. Um, um, oh God, yeah. This would be another one of my favorites. The New Girl Station.
Ruthann.
Yeah. Did you read this one?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I mean, like I know you're in healthcare. I'm sort of by proxy now, but I worked in direct patient care for many years, and this one hit me on like an emotional level of like just how treating your patients like people is yeah, she just writes about that. Like it hit me so emotionally. I was like, I have to put this on my list because even though that's not like the whole point of the story, like the story is dark and horrible. But for me, the whole like saving grace was just treating your patient like a person.
Yeah. Human to
Um,
human.
yeah.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, the rest I read on my Kindle, and my Kindle is currently dead, so I don't have those to
That's
share. But
fine. What were they?
so Faces of Beth by Carver Pike. I went into that one blind. Like I didn't really know what it was about. I had just heard him talk about like writing it on Written and Read, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll pick it up. And the reveal like hit me. I had no idea. Um, and like just for that moment alone, and also the whole like imagery of little tiny 6-year-old girl beating the ever living crap out of the demon. Yep, okay. Mhm.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah, I was like, uh-huh, this is up there. Um, and then I really loved, and this is another one from you guys. Oh, good Lord, I can't think of anything. So here's a little. I took notes on my phone, and then my computer wouldn't let me like log in. I could like that's why you couldn't hear me. So now I'm like filming this on my phone. So I'm like, all my notes are there. How am I supposed to?
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, so Colt Skinner's short story. Your English is good.
Yes. Yes.
For like a debut, I was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. If this is like as good, like this is what your debut is, I'm going to read everything else you write. Like and I'm sure, oh, and speaking of
Oh,
Natasha
Natasha.
Sinclair, Incesticide. Oh my God.
And God bless
I
her. She gave us a shout out in the acknowledgments. I love her so much.
I know I opened it up and I opened my copy and I was like, oh, I have to screenshot this and send it to Marian and Christina. Like,
no idea. I had no idea. I was so excited. I love Natasha Sinclair. So she and I have this mutual love of the kids show Bluey. And we both live to be just like Bluey and Bingo's mom, Chili.
oh,
Like we love this animated dog woman. She's just such a good mom. We're like, why can't we be as good as that dog mom? I love her so much. Oh man.
I have never seen that show, but I will tell you that like after last season sometime you wore a Bluey shirt and you were like all about it. And then I saw it like everywhere. It was like all my Facebook friends with like small children were like talking about Bluey. I'm like, what is this?
It is hilarious. I freaking love it. Christina and I actually just few weeks ago, she was like, have you been watching the new season of Bluey? As if it was like Stranger Things. Like, Stranger Things, what? Who gives a shit? Have you been watching the new season of Bluey? Because that's what really matters.
You're like, yeah, my kids weren't even home when I watched it.
It's a comfort show. After I have this baby, I'll sit in bed with the baby and I'll be like, you want to watch Bluey? You don't know what life is yet. Let's watch some Bluey.
Oh.
All right, girl. You ready? You ready for Paula time? Shall we send her a little invitation?
Yeah, I'm as ready as I'll ever be. Like, might fangirl out here. I don't know. I might just fall over dead. I'm unsure.
It's gonna be fun. Okay, y'all, we'll be back in a minute.
It's Paul. Oh my God.
Oh, okay. I need to tell you, you have the best smile in the world. I could look at your smile all day. And she takes these pictures and she puts them online and she's like, and I'm
Paula?
like, no, give me the smile. It's the best one I've ever seen in my whole
Lesnar, thank you so much. That is so sweet. Thank you.
Oh, Paula, Ashe, thank you for being on our show.
I love it.
Hi, Rachel. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Oh, I love you so much. You should have seen the messaging that was going back and forth between Rachel and I this morning, because we were really trying to get our questions down, because, you know, we want to seem like intelligent and organized in thought. And when we start going through, because I'm pretty sure that she and I now have read everything. But it's like this chain reaction of questions and comments and thoughts and things that we want to process. And I'm like, I don't even know if we're actually going to have questions, or if this is just going to be an hour of us being like, you're amazing, and here's why I think this, and can you tell me if I'm right, because I don't know if I'm right, but this is what's going on in my head. I love you.
I might be crying a little bit. I was like,
you came out of nowhere, lady.
I did, seemingly so, yeah.
You popped in.
Wild.
Paula Ashe done slid into my DMs one day. She was like, I wrote this book. You want to read it? And I was like, yeah. Hi.
That was it. It's funny because I had started following your page about your TikTok like maybe a month before it started, and I'm not a big TikToker. Like, I don't know much about TikTok, and so, but I had seen the title, which was, you know, TF that I just read, and I was like, well, that sounds like something I, you know, would be into. And so I had just happened to started following your Facebook page for the TikTok, and I watched a few, and, you know, I saw that you liked really transgressive, you know, extreme kind of horror. And so then my book was coming out, and I was like, well, you know, like you said, I you know, I tried to shoot my shot. I was like, well, I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? She can say no, you know, like that's how it is with everything. Like, the worst that can happen is somebody says no. And I sent it, and here we are.
And now I will require every beta and arc that comes into existence. Like I said in that TikTok, and I was talking about it again in the intro, I got halfway through that freaking collection, didn't even finish it, and messaged you and was like, this is the best book I've ever read in my whole fucking life. What the hell? I sent you a friend request. I need you to be on my podcast.
I got 3 stories in, and instantly, like, was IMing Christina and Marian like, what the fuck? Like, why is this so good? Why is this so good?
I was like, I know, right? I know, right? Yeah. So when you come here You come here to get fangirled over, like we'll drool over you. And we're like, you're amazing, you're fantastic, you're wonderful. Here's every way you're a genius. Now let's process your childhood trauma.
Right. Lighting is terrible, and I should have a ring lamp or something, but I don't. But
oh, mine.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's the next. I mean, people read my stuff, and the next question is, you know, after they read it is, what the fuck is wrong with you? Or, you know, tell me about your childhood. How do you feel about your mom? It seems like you might have some mom stuff that you need to get out and process.
Ooh, that might be why I like it. Why I like your stuff so much.
The mom stuff. No. Yeah. I mean, and like my mom is wonderful. She's a lovely woman. But I mean, I feel like parents in general, moms in particular, for at least for me, but like I feel like with parents, you have so much power over somebody else's life, and you just don't know what's going to happen. You know, you don't know what's going to happen. And I think that there are so many, and particularly like in this era, I guess, of 2022, just in terms of like childhood development psychology and what we know about children and trauma and child rearing, those things that like our parents and our parents' parents and so forth and so on just didn't know about. It's just,
yeah,
like there's so much stuff that we know is damaging, but it's considered like a normal, you know, like that's just how you raise kids. And that's always been something that I've been really fascinated by, because, you know, I grew up and everybody said that my mom was like the soft one, and my mom was not. As far as you wasn't soft to me, and so that was always really interesting, because I was always like, you know, like I grew up in a household where, you know, I grew up in a household where physical discipline was the norm. And so, but it was like everybody was like, you know, your mom's really soft on you, and I was just like, is she? Because you know, I have, you know, my mom's go-to was a house shoe, you know, and so I don't. Is that not? I can assure you it is not, you know. So and every people were like, well, yeah, well, my mom made me go out and pick out my own Switch, and I'm like, well, that's disturbing, and you know that shouldn't happen. But so, and then like I'm a parent now, like I'm a mom, and you know, I don't do physical discipline. My wife and I, we don't do that. But it's seen, you know, in some corners of the world and in some corners of our lives, where people are like, you know, that's what's wrong with your kid. Like we have a toddler, right. and it's like, well, you know, she wouldn't act like that if you gave her physical discipline. And I'm just like, she's a toddler. Like that's how kids act. Hi. Training.
So yeah, this guy all the time is telling me how strict I am. And I'm like, buddy, you don't even know what strict is. Like,
I don't know.
You have no idea, pal. You have no clue.
No clue. Yeah.
I talk about that in the trainings that I do, because we talk a lot about trauma and how it forms our behavioral responses to stress and crisis later in life. And like the universe has been traumatizing humans since we developed consciousness. It's just the last 30 or 40 years that we as a species have realized what an impact it actually has, and that it's like a thing.
Absolutely.
Plus, my 18-year-old never learned emotional intelligence. And yet this guy and his almost 10-year-old sister, starting in preschool every day, had to identify what emotion they were experiencing.
Wow.
And go through.
That's awesome.
There's an entire course we have out here called Junior Achievement, where they're learning emotional intelligence and how their emotional responses and behaviors affect the emotional responses of other people. So like they're getting emotional intelligence that we never
had.
Mm-hmm.
Never had. I enroll late in Junior Achievement, because that might happen.
No, Paula, we don't need we need you to be emotionally messed up so you can continue to write beautiful stories.
Yes. And actually, that was really a really great segue into like my first question for you.
Yeah.
Like, you are my master of short fiction. I feel like what I'm going to say to you mostly today is like fangirl statements rather than actual questions, but whatever. So I love short stories because I'm a little bit ADHD. I thrive on fast and freaky fiction.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I find that it takes a certain level of mastery to trigger a storm of questions and emotions inside someone's brain when the piece of art you've given them is like less than 20 pages.
Mhm.
And going back to that concept of motherhood, your story, we were actually talking about this in the intro, Mothers of All Monsters,
Mhm.
I think is a prime example of this. Like, where do I even start?
Mhm.
And I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who has yet to read it, but it worked me over. You and I are both moms,
Mhm.
and this
Mhm.
story really dives into that place of the mom brain where you're looking at this beautiful human that you've created, and then you're potentially confronted with the possibility that they are not what you thought they were, and perhaps
Yeah.
they are not safe for this world. And then, what is my responsibility as their mother? How do I reconcile that that person is piece of me? Is how I choose to
Mhm.
handle the situation actually a reflection of who I am deep down inside? And does that mean my capacity for evil is just as deep as my child's? And then does the choice I make prove that my child's behavior was inevitable? And then does that mean I'm no better? Like,
You spiraled.
Yeah, then you did spiral. But no, I appreciate, because those are all the questions that I was asking myself. And I know, like you said, I don't want to spoil it either, but that story, that's one of the earliest stories I wrote. I wrote that before I was a parent. I wrote that story, God, I was still in college. I was an undergrad when I wrote that story. And the reason why I wrote it was because this was several years after what's his name? This was several years after Jeffrey Dahmer had been murdered in prison, right? Like, he was murdered in prison. And I remember I had watched several documentaries about Dahmer because, you know, and because it's fascinating. And I remember in so many of the documentaries and so many of the things I read, one of the things that people kept talking about was how, like, everybody kept blaming his mom, like not his mom and his dad, but everybody kept blaming his mom specifically because she had some history of like emotional trauma and neglect. She had some kind of like psychological history. And so everybody kept pointing back to her mom, or pointing back to his mom. And I just remember thinking, like, but how was she? How do you know? How do you know who your child is going to be? How do you know that? And what is your response? Like you said, like, where is that line for responsibility? Because it seems like the solution to, a problem such of that one is to, then you have to remove your child, we'll say. And how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? And it's funny because a couple days ago on Twitter, there was, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something, it was not even a couple days ago, so this is completely random, but it was about, Queen Elizabeth II died. And a lot of people were saying a lot of things on Twitter about it. And somebody was saying, like, we can't celebrate her because she protected her son, who is, a pedophile. And people were like, you can't celebrate her because she protected her son. And again, I'm not saying that she should have or whatever, but again, you don't get to control your kid after a certain point. Like, you so this, like, what do you do with that?
How do you reconcile that? Dahmer is a really great example there, because we always, when we look at serial killers or people who commit violent crimes like that, where's the first place we always go? We go back to the history, the childhood history.
Yeah.
We look for the ACEs, the adverse childhood events, and the trauma. Well, they say Dahmer had none. He had none. He had a well-adjusted middle class life.
white family in the burbs, like
Parents
had
that were together. They say maybe we had a couple of traumatic brain injuries, but not even as many as most serial killers are noted to have. So he's just an example of how there is in some people, they're brought into this world and they just have a deep capacity for evil.
Yeah.
And I love this character that you created because she has to make a very clear choice. But then when you as a mother sit back, you really have to think about it. You're like, but the choice that you make speaks volumes about who you are as well.
Yeah.
And then are you really all that different from each other? And was there a level of this where maybe you could have expected it if you dug a little deep and you do that in like 20 pages?
There's a quote.
What kills me.
There's a quote in that story that I just like, I feel like sums that up a lot. There's a beast in every body. Some people go their whole lives without feeling its frenzy. And I'm like, that's exactly what you're like talking about like how, so there's a beast in, in Dahmer, and like, it just became a frenzy. Like, I don't know.
No, you're right, Rachel. I think that's, because I think, you know how when people who are into horror, everybody always asks, like, what's the thing you're afraid of? And I don't often give this answer, but I mean, the thing that I think that a lot of people, myself included, that I'm really afraid of is me, because I feel like everybody has that capacity. Everybody has, it sounds bad, but I do. I'm sorry. That's how I feel like everybody has that capacity to do something really, really terrible and, harmful. But it depends on the circumstances that bring it out, right? And so it's like, if you can't control your circumstances, then like, who do you become in those certain, situations? And so that's really what that's about. Like, I feel like, and that's true for everybody. And I feel like some people are kind of oblivious, some people just don't know. But, for better or for worse, unfortunately, I'm one of those people who I recognize that pretty early on. And I realized not only is it just me, that's everybody. You hear so many stories about people who, it always comes back to like somebody who's done something terrible to multiple people, right? Like a serial killer, like somebody who abuses children or something. And it's like, well, they seem like such a nice person. They were such good people. But it's just that, something happens. And they are both that person who's a good person, but they're also a monster. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I just think people are messed up. that's where it comes from.
Oh my God.
Man, this is your jam.
Yes, they are.
I think you know better than most. Yeah, for sure.
Rachel, you had a really great question about how this all got started in the first place.
Yeah. So, it kind of, we might already know, I think this is the one you're talking about, Marian, but we might already know the answer to this now after this last conversation. But I noticed that a lot of your stories kind of have like a crime aspect or a true crime aspect, or involve like police and whatever, like that whole kind of thing. So I was kind of wondering, is there like a specific case that you remember that kind of like started your interest in that, or that like cultivated that like interest in criminals, and kind of like that where you take it in your writing?
And then how did that evolve into the dark fiction that you're cranking out now?
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm trying to think, and maybe it was something different, but I think really it was Dahmer. Because I'm originally from Ohio, and so that wasn't too far away from where that happened. And I just remember I was in like middle school, I think, like 6th or 7th grade, I think. And I remember like people were talking, like he had been arrested, and people were talking about like the things that he had done. And like that's some really harrowing stuff to encounter when you're a kid, right? And you think that, like middle school, I still think people in middle school are kids, but like,
Oh yeah.
So it was just very, and so I remember I had my math teacher was originally, my 7th grade algebra teacher was originally from Wisconsin. And I think he said that he at one point lived near the Dahmers, but had moved away, or if it was Wisconsin, whichever state was they were in, like he had at one point kind of been neighbors with them, but his family had moved away.
Oh, whoa.
And and so and I don't know why, but my 7th grade algebra teacher told us that story. And I'm the kind of person where stuff gets stuck, like that kind of stuff. It just gets stuck in my brain. And so I just kind of ruminated about it for decades. And so I think that was the one. I remember learning about Sylvia Likens. And that's the basis of Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door, and that just really horrified me. I haven't read that book.
I haven't either.
I don't know if I ever will. I don't know if I can do it. But I remember learning about it, and I think there's a film version of it.
There is, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I think I watched part of that. Like, I don't even think I made it through the whole thing. But it's really that kind of stuff that gets me, where it's like, and then I think also, I really want to do something, like write something about this, but I haven't had the chance to do so yet. But I grew up through the Satanic Panic in the 80s.
Yeah.
And so we went to the church that I went to as a child was very like into that. And we would go to like but like I was a child, but like we would get like piles of like vinyl records, like heavy metal records, and like stomp on them to like kill the like it was a very bizarre time.
My husband grew up in the same kind of church. Like his mom after they got involved in the Pentecostal church, she threw away all of his Godzilla action figures because they were demonic.
Oh,
I had an aunt who because my mom would let me go to the library and get whatever books I wanted, and of course all I got was like horror and true crime, because and I remember my aunt and my mom got into like a pretty heated argument because my aunt was telling my mom that I was like bringing active demons into the house through books, and my mom was like like bless her, my mom was just like, they're just books, like what? And so dodge that bullet, thanks mom. But I mean, like that stuff was like, it was dead serious, and so I think that had a big impact as well, just because I don't know, like it just seemed like evil is a real thing, and it's right there, and it's in your house, and there are demons, you know what I mean? But I guess I took it to the crime route because I just always have been fascinated with like the idea, and I know our understandings of police and policing are much different than they were, back in the 80s and 90s, but it just always seemed like the people who really did have to face like everyday evil was like people in law enforcement and people who worked in in therapeutic medical settings, like the people who have to deal with that are the people who work in mental health care. People, I'm working hard now to try to make things that's more oriented toward like social work and mental health care, because I feel like those people, even more so than law enforcement, they really have to deal with it. So
yes. Well, it's so funny because a lot of people will be, because I do have a tendency to be very bubbly and light and lively and like sunshiny. I'm a Gemini. We have those. We have the light and,
duality
and the dark. But a lot of people are like, well, how can you handle this stuff? Like, why do you read this stuff? I'm like, you don't forget what I do for a living. Like, I have heard real life stuff that is way worse.
I can't even
than a lot of what I've read in these books. Like some of the stories, I could tell you, I had a man who came in, he murdered his mother with an axe because the devil was inside of her. And when the devil came out of her, it went into his left arm. So what did he do? He cut his left arm off.
Holy shit.
like the human brain is an amazing thing. And the
It's
real
scary.
stuff that's happening out there is sometimes wilder
Worse.
than anything we can
Oh,
put
yeah.
on paper. So I'm like, this is actually a little bit of an escape for me.
It's a reprieve.
honestly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's also,
Yeah.
I think it's important, like going back to that whole concept of like how you terrorize your readers by tapping into the horror of the human psyche, because we are the most terrifying things that exist on this
Yes.
planet.
For sure. For
Quite
sure.
honestly,
For
and
sure.
that's where real horror comes from, is from each other, from other humans. Hell is other people, right?
Yep. For sure.
Ain't that truth?
Well, and
Go
I
ahead.
noticed like in a lot of your books, you do have like a person who then morphs into a monster, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's not necessarily like a bad monster, but specifically like two that are not in We Are Here to Hurt Each Other, but the one from the Indiana Crime, what is that, like The Skin of All Men?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'm so shook that you read that.
I loved it.
I just read it again this morning.
It's that one is so good.
All
And
this
like,
stuff's in here.
I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Mater Nihil.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, like that one too. It's like you take these seemingly human people and then like morph them into something deeper. So a lot like there's a monster in all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But a monster doesn't necessarily have to be bad.
It doesn't have to be bad. I think one of, and somebody asked me this the other day. It was for an interview, and I couldn't think of I couldn't think of the right thing to say, because they had asked me like if there's anything that like I wanted people to take away from We Are Here to Hurt Each Other, like what's the takeaway? And like the answer I gave was suitable, but like what you and like what you both have brought up is really it. Like, yes, we do have monsters in us, many of us do, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Sometimes the monster can be the protector. Sometimes the monster can be the defender. And I think one of the things that we kind of, as human beings, have to do is we have to try, like, ignoring it doesn't work. And I understand that there are some monsters in people that there's no rehabilitating that,
Yeah, no.
Like sometimes it's just like, no, but
No capacity for empathy.
Yeah, none whatsoever. Like completely just total full-blown sociopathy, that kind of thing. Like there's no coming back from that. But I think for some of us, you have to acknowledge that, and you have to try and make it, if you can, into a strength sometimes. Because I think that that human monster inside of us has the capacity to do some things that could be considered good. I think if you can temper that with compassion, if you can temper that with some empathy, I think you can have that monster live alongside you and inside you, and still be a person who doesn't harm others. I think that's kind of like, I don't know, that's what I'm trying to do, I think. But also thank y'all so much for reading my other stuff. I'm so shook right now. I'm like,
oh my God.
Thank you.
We told you, fangirls.
Yes. You are not kidding.
Oh my God, yes. Well, I like to expand beyond the more frequently asked questions, like the one I'm about to hit you with. But I personally feel you are a unique voice within dark fiction right now, because horror stereotypically is dominated by cisgendered white people.
Yeah.
And now we have you, and you are a brilliant queer African-American woman breaking through this genre like a fucking wrecking ball. And I know you're a big Clive Barker fan.
I am.
But were there any other authors who really touched that spot in your soul and sparked your connection with horror? Because, you have this genre was not set up to create that connection for you the way it has with a lot of other readers, just being honest.
Sure.
Which I think is why a lot of our African American friends, like, they find it later because it's not marketed the right way. It's like, yeah, no, speak to me.
So for me, so there's my big three is Clive Barker. And I don't even remember how I discovered Clive Barker, but I'll come back to Clive Barker, or if you any point, any time when anybody wants to talk about Clive Barker, I'm available. But the other one, so the big one for real for me, and this, I don't know, the Toni Morrison, right? So I read The Bluest Eye in high school, and I read it. I was in an AP English class, and my teacher, Mr. Rogers, was like, "Paula, you like stuff that's kind of horrific. Maybe you'll like The Bluest Eye." So he told me to read it, and that book changed my life. Like, hands down, it changed everything. Because even though I know that Ancestor Morrison never considered herself a horror writer, so much of her work is horror. It is horrific in its implication. It is horrific in its narrative structure. And The Bluest Eye was one of the first things that I ever read. And if you haven't read it, it's the story of a young Black girl in the 50s in Ohio. She's been told her whole life, she's pretty dark-skinned, and she's been told her whole life that she's ugly, and all she wants in the world is blue eyes, because that is the standard of beauty that has been presented to her, right? And so she is she is exploited and victimized and traumatized by pretty much everyone she comes into contact with, largely because of her dark skin, and that people think she's ugly. And the story is told from the perspective of another young girl who knows her and befriended her. But it's one of the most horrifying stories I've ever read. And I remember it felt like after I read it, it felt like something opened up in the world to me, like something like, you can tell a story that's horrific and harrowing and heartbreaking, and it can have a point. Like, you can tell a horror story that says something about the world that you live in. Now, when I was in high school, was I able to do that? No. It took a while, I think. But that was the thing that opened the door for me, was Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye. And then I read everything that she's written. And then I think I read the next one I read from her was Beloved, which is about enslavement, the enslavement of West African peoples in the United States, and the woman Setha who kills her own child rather than have that child go into the system of the plantation system of slavery. And that was another one that just, like, I mean, I remember I had nightmares about that book for months. And so I don't know, like, it was like Toni Morrison gave me that permission to tell stories about the experiences of people who don't often get to tell about their experiences, and particularly people whose stories are really horrific and terrible, but we don't see them as that because we just presume, so many horror movies and horror stories are told about white middle to upper class,
because everything's whitewashed.
Yeah, and cisgender heterosexual people, and it's like, do you really think that the only people who experience like horror in the world are those people? Because that's not how that works. So
yeah, no,
it
makes absolutely no sense to me, because marginalized communities are the ones who are facing the most real life horror from a sociological standpoint. When you look at it, that is real life. That is what's really happening. Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou wrote some of the most unflinching transgressive horror fiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're so ahead of their time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
in what they gave us. Because it was looking at you know, a lot of people think about, like, myself included, like Last Exit, Brooklyn, Hubert Selby,
Mm-hmm.
transgressive fiction looking at the real horrors of life, and it doesn't get classified as horror, even though it's some of the most horrific stuff you're ever going to read. But even still, even though that, again, that was one of the first books I read where, even though it was mostly about a Caucasian community, there was a lot of xenophobia because there's a lot of racism towards Jewish people in that book. And there are several characters in there who are very, very overtly homosexual. They are queer. There's drag queen. Like, he wrote this book in the 60s. And he was telling it like it was like one of the first times I got to really explore like the marginalization of these communities and how they were affected on that sociological, the urban level. And holy shit, like, that's horror. That is horror. There are different styles in the way people present this, and we actually were talking about this in the intro, where I kind of introduced the concept that your eloquence and the elegance, the lyrical nature of your writing, it makes it feel like we're almost walking through one of your dreams. It's not a fogginess, but there's this dreamlike veil over things, especially with the short stories that you included in We Are Here to Hurt Each Other. My brain loves to make connections, but sometimes it takes a while. And it wasn't until I was in the car this morning going to the grocery store where I was really thinking about things. I was like, you know what? I kind of I have to put you in this little triad. It's you and Eric LaRocca, and I'm going to put you guys in there with Neil Gaiman.
Oh,
so you guys, it's like your writing makes me feel like you're personally reaching out and you're taking my hand, and you guys are like, okay, hey, come with me. I'm going to walk you through this thing, and it's going to be awful and horrible and painful, but it's also going to be extraordinarily beautiful. And
that's some incredible company right there, and I'm super honored to be in that grouping. And because I think everybody knows, like, I'm a pretty hardcore Eric LaRocca fangirl. Like, I accidentally bought 3 copies of
accidentally
I bought 3 copies. So at first I posted on Twitter because I had bought 2, right? I was like, what the hell's wrong with me? I have ADHD, because I do have ADHD. And I'm like, see, this is what happens when you have ADHD. I brought 2 different copies of the same damn book. No, baby, I bought 3. I bought 3 of them. The other one came yesterday, and my wife was like, don't you already have this book? And I was like,
no, I don't.
No, and like, they're both sitting on my nightstand. Like, I'm so busted. Like, I'm just clearly busted. She's like, why did you buy this book 3 times? I'm like, I don't know. But the nice thing is the last one I bought was actually signed. So I was like, well, at least there's that. So I bought that one signed. But yeah, I have 3 copies of Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke and Other Misfortunes. So I'm gonna lend one to a friend, and then I don't know what I'm gonna do with the other copy.
Well, it reminds me a lot of Clive Barker. And then knowing that he was a big literary influence on you, I know you're a big Hellraiser fan.
Yes.
And if that isn't the epitome of walking through a nightmarish dreamscape, and yet, like, he was one of the first people that took us, he kind of blended the horror of human nature plus the horror fantasy, and kind of stuck them together, and how one influenced the other. And I feel like that comes out a lot, especially in the short stories that are in We Are Here to Hurt Each Other, because that's really what it's all about, those 2 worlds kind of clashing together.
And I think and like, so my big 3, it's Clive Barker, Toni Morrison, and then the third one is Elizabeth Massey. I don't know if you're familiar with Beth Massey at all. She she run a Stoker several years ago for the novel Sin Eater. She's written Wire Mesh Mothers. She's written a ton of stuff, and she's really prolific in a lot of different genres. And she wrote this, and she won a novella for a story called Stephen that I read. And you're like,
Damn it!
She wrote this novella called Stephen, and it knocked me knocked me flat on my ass when I read it. This was again like 10, 15 years ago. And it's one of those stories that's like that. Like it's this prose that's lush, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. It's about one of the most harrowing kind of, experiences that someone can have. It's a story about a woman who experiences sexual abuse at the hands of her brother. And it's so good. And that was another one like that also opened a door for me to see, like, again, you can tell these stories that are just really harrowing, but that are about things that happen in real life that happen to people that we don't talk about, that we just kind of pretend doesn't happen, or that it can't happen to us or whatever. And so that's like the other one, and it also has like that kind of dream-like quality where, like, what's happening is happening, but it's so nightmarish. You're like, I wish this wasn't happening, but it is. And yeah, I highly recommend her work. She's phenomenal and such a nice and approachable person. I'm such a big fangirl of hers, and she's on Facebook, and I'm always like I don't know, like I just talked to her, and she's super nice to me and talks to me, and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe you're talking to me. So yeah, she's amazing.
We were talking about that concept earlier.
Like, I literally can't believe this is my life today. Like,
yeah.
Oh, that is so sweet. Bless you both. Thank you.
Because everybody is like, I'm just a person, and then somebody else will stand across from you and be like, but you're not.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To me, you are this very special creature. And you're like, no.
I bought 3 copies of the same book. I'm just not at all. Not at all. But I appreciate it. And it's again, I think I particularly I feel like we are in a moment for a variety of reasons where I think people are paying more attention to horror, and I think people are paying more attention to horror that's coming, from marginalized voices. And I think that is really it's really incredible to be part of that. And I just think it's very it's been a long time coming. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of energy in the movement right now. I think there's a lot of energy now, and that's really cool.
Oh, absolutely. And, kind of building off of that, Rachel had a really great question that she shared with me earlier about your use of spirituality in your work.
Ooh.
Rachel, hit her with that one, because that was a great question.
Oh, good Lord. I think this is one that I was like, I don't know if there's a question here.
I think there is.
I've just kind of noticed in a lot of your work that there is like deep-seated, it's more like old religion, like indigenous religion principles in a lot of your stories. And I thinking to myself, I'm like, well, this could come from like religious trauma, or like, I don't know, like I didn't want to get too deep and be like, well tell me what is your faith, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. But then I'm also noticing I'm like indigenous and like kind of like voodoo-esque, and like these really great like old religions that like run through. And I'm so curious, like, where does that come from?
I was reflecting on the base of this question she had, and when I was thinking about this, I thought, well, a lot of these theological ideologies are now often inappropriately labeled as a cult in our modern times. So,
sure.
tell us about where did it I mean, you already recognize like growing up in the Pentecostal church is a thing in and of itself. God bless them. But can you speak more to like the importance of using those ideologies and that level of spiritual focus in your writing?
Yeah, so thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Marian, for both noticing that, because I've been waiting for somebody to ask those questions. And I don't think so.
Yeah, yours. I'm not an idiot, I swear. Oh,
No, because it's not something. Well, okay. So I told you guys about that's the satanic panic thing in the 80s. And so, yeah. So, I mean, I grew up in a very, I grew up, I don't know how many is a lot, but I feel like I grew up around a lot of religious fanatics. And like, I remember like one of the first things I ever learned about in church was the book of Revelations, which again, you should not let children know anything about that. Like, you just really shouldn't in the biblical book of Revelation. And so, I mean, that messed me up. I'm just be honest, that messed me up real bad. I'm still messed up about that. And but it's that kind of stuff. But then I've also always been kind of interested in like kind of divergent, I guess, spiritual paths and belief systems. Like I personally, I identify as a secular humanist, but I also identify as an agnostic. And I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer to anything beyond this, you know? But I know that human beings and our consciousness creates a sense of something else, creates a sense of the divine. And I just find that really fascinating. Like, I just think that's really interesting. And I think, I mean, as far as like indigenous kind of, practices, marginalized practices that are seen as cultic, it's really interesting that you notice that, because my family has no, we have no indigenous or, sort of cultural, religious, spiritual connections. Like, everybody in my family, as far as I know, is just, run of the mill, some level of Christian, like definitely grounded in like the Black church. But beyond that, like, nobody in my family that I'm aware of like practices any, kind of African, West African or Caribbean, religious practices. So I don't know, maybe it just came out from somewhere, but I don't know, like, I've always been really fascinated by that. And I also, talking about like the sociological kind of aspect of it, like, you can't talk about, I hate to say it, but it's true. Like, you can't talk about like abuse and abuses of power and things like that without also thinking about, like the church and the role that religion plays in those things, and how people, abuse their power, abuse their religious power, abuse their religious authority. And so I think for me, it's a lot of trying to explore that. But then also, again, because I come from from people who take their faith very seriously, I feel like there's a reason for that. Like, there's a reason why people believe what they believe, and particularly as I get older, when you're young and kind of like, angry, and you're just like, I don't that's bullshit, and like that's fair. But you also, particularly as you grow older and you start to encounter those significant losses that just really damage you, it makes sense why people believe what they believe sometimes. Yes. It makes sense why people are looking for something beyond, just what's right in front of them, because it's hard to deal with that by yourself. It's a lot easier in some ways and understandable in some ways to, give that to a higher power, give that, to the ancestors, or to give, whatever the situation is. And so I get that. I appreciate, I may not practice it personally, but I do understand the reason why people do it. So I hope that answered your question, Rachel. Sorry.
Oh,
Well, I mean, if we're talking about like, generational trauma is definitely a thing, why wouldn't
Absolutely.
there also be a little bit of like maybe generational faith, or like a lot, like especially when we want to talk about like slavery and people going,
Mhm.
like they survive like through their faith. And so it could always just be a little bit of that is passed down and just like in there somewhere, that like that's what's coming out in your writing.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, like I don't have any particular faith-based system that I believe in, but like I have, there's a woman by the name of Danielle Thomas, and she runs a blog website called The Unfit Christian, and like, it's like millennial faith, kind of like online, like digital faith, and it's the best of both worlds, right? Like it's the very familiar kind of Christianity and gospel Black church, grounded kind of faith that's comfortable for me, but it's also like very inclusive, very queer, very woman friendly, and anti-misogyny, misogynoir, like, so it's kind of like the perfect blend of both. And like I don't, again, whatever my belief system may be, I still find her work and the work of similar people to be deeply comforting for me in a level that I can't really explain, because I grew up in it, like I grew up in it. Like it's going to comfort me no matter what. Like gospel music I am going to find it comforting whether I consciously want to or not, because that's some of the first stuff I heard when I was, like an infant. So yeah.
I relate to this so hard. It kind of is. My sister and I were raised by an Episcopal priest. Our mother was a Catholic school teacher. My middle name comes from my godmother, who was a nun.
Wow.
So Christian, but my parents are so progressive, and the Episcopal Church is incredibly progressive.
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
And so while I was still going to church every Sunday and an acolyte and in the choir and all that stuff, my dad is bringing home Labyrinth and Amityville and horror movies and taking us to the Cell and feeding us fantasy and Lord of the Rings and sci-fi and all of this stuff. So we're getting both of these worlds. And now where my sister and I have landed is Christian mysticism, because the church in and of itself doesn't feel right.
Yes.
But what feels right is the mystical, almost supernatural, almost paranormal aspect of it makes more sense to us. And I know that might sound funky, but we also are very, very Irish and Viking in our DNA. And I wonder if that's why we connect so deeply with that, because our ancestors were pagans.
Yeah.
And so that's what feels right to me on a genetic level. Like I found that blend. My sister found that blend. And it's comforting. You find where you land and you sit there and you're like, okay, yeah, no, this is all right. I am also agnostic. I'm like, I'm going to put my faith in this thing. I don't know if it's real, but I'm going to lean into it for the sake of coping.
I mean, end of the day, you got to get through it. And sometimes that's what does it for you. Sometimes I always have those, they call like the dark nights of the soul, but I always remember joy comes in the morning, right? That's a Christian Black church. That's a cornerstone. That's a touchstone. Joy comes in the morning. All right. So it sucks right now, but if I can make it through this night, joy will come in the morning. And hey, it works. It works for me. Maybe it's dumb, maybe it's superstitious, I don't know, but all I know is I gotta get through it. So that's how I do it. So.
Well, I love the way that kind of relates back to how you use it in horror, because it really is. It's part of the natural human psychological defense to lean on spirituality and faith in the face of the unknown. And that adds to the horror of things sometimes. Absolutely. Because the void if we just allow ourselves to exist in the void and not apply a greater power to it, that's almost more terrifying.
That's more terrifying. It's one of the reasons. I mean, I really love the work of Thomas Ligotti, which I haven't mentioned before, but I love Thomas Ligotti's work, and I love Conspiracy Against the Human Race, because that was one of the first books that like I was like, okay, I'm not alone. I feel this cosmic pessimistic, you know, I feel that vibe in the world. Like that's what the world appears like, you know, to me a lot of times. And it was reassuring. I think that's one of the things too that a lot of you know, like, you know, talking about like Eric LaRocca and like that transgressive kind of, you know, horror, it's comforting because, you know, it's isolating to see the world in a way that most people kind of refuse to see the world. And I you know, particularly for like, you know, if you are, you know, of a marginalized or several marginalized groups or what have you, your perspective is not always validated, right? And so it was comforting to me to see writing by people, you know, like Toni Morrison and Clive Barker and Poppy Z. Bride and Caitlin R. Kiernan and so many of these other, you know, folks who like, who like I got, like that made sense to me. Like, you know, that made the world, it was reassuring and validating to know that other people saw this stuff that was happening, whatever, you know, it may be. And I think that's really important. So
do you think that's why the Hellraiser mythos, you connect with that so deeply?
I mean, probably. Like it's either that or just perversion, but so I'm gonna go
a little bit of both. A little bit of both. Living my best life on both sides of that spectrum.
I think part of it is that. I think a lot of it is because it's that recognition of, I mean, again, like the story of like Hellraiser is really a story, particularly from like Julia's perspective. It's a story of a person who, like, yes, what she's doing is awful and it's horrible, but she's doing it out of love, like out of a, well, love, I mean, you know, but yes. You know, like, I mean,
well, it goes back to that monster inside of you and how the monster chooses evil sometimes for reasons that otherwise could be interpreted from a cognitive empathy space. I don't agree with your behavior, but I can at least recognize why you're behaving in the way you're behaving based on the circumstances of your situation. Doesn't make you any less of a monster.
Right.
But cognitively, I get it.
I can get that. I get it, Julia. I don't agree, but I get it.
You're still the worst.
You're still,
but I get it.
You know, if I was married to Larry, I might kill some people too. I don't know. Larry sucks. You know. Anyway,
speaking of the worst, you know, Clive Barker. Oh man, he blew my mind. I think you and I are like in that same age range. I might be older than you. God bless you. But growing up in the, you know, I was just getting into books like this around 89, 90.
Yeah.
And God bless my progressive parents are letting me pick up things like Clive Barker, probably because they didn't know no damn better.
They didn't know, right? Yeah.
And my grandmother was really into horror, and I started with Peter Straub, like 6 and 7, reading them on her and not knowing what I was reading, but at least it was starting to get in there. And just, you're not even really fully cognitively aware of what it is you're absorbing at that point in time, but as you grow older you're like, oh, this makes so much more sense now. And it kind of forms how you look at people. And Clive Barker he probably set me up for the career in mental health because of the way he presents humanity. But he being who he is as a person, he also was very unflinching and just being like, there's some of us out here, this is our life.
Yeah.
Here's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I could talk to you about all of this for hours. Well, we'll all have to get together off camera sometime and
just have a chat.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let's take a quick break here because we've been at it with you for almost an hour now. We've had your brain working overtime. We're going to take a quick break for our little godless ad break, and then we're going to come hit you with the rapid fire 4. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, here we go.
Hey kids, looking for a way to affordably access the best and wildest independent extreme horror currently in existence? Godless Horrors is the place to be. Go to www.godless.com to gain access to thousands of extreme horror and splatterpunk books from the genre's best and brightest independent authors. Godless Horrors offers every title in their catalog in a variety of formats to ensure compatibility with your favorite digital reading device. Strapped for cash? No worries. Godless has a fantastic collection of free titles ready for instant download, with other titles in their collection rarely exceeding $3 to $4. Again, go to www.godless.com or download the app and tell them what the fuck you're looking for. Come join the Godless tribe today. Forever delightfully deviant. Forever godless.
Oh my God. Well, we just had this amazing conversation about like humanity and the horror of humanity and stuff, and didn't even reflect on the fact that the title of your damn book is We Are Here to Hurt Each Other, and that somebody straight up asked you, well, what's the takeaway from the book? I'm pretty sure it's in the title. I'll put it right out there for everybody because that's what we are.
And your honesty about being like, I want to hurt people. In the afterward, I was like, yes. Because I am reading this to feel something. So hurt me, please.
Some of us like to hurt others. Some of us like to be hurt. And I know when you say stuff like that, people always take it to like a sexual place. And that's not really what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not that I'm not talking about that, but that's not exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I'm talking about, so for example, like I'm really bad at expressing my anger in ways that is like appropriate. Like I struggle with that so badly, and that's largely because while I was growing up, and this is very true for a lot of like particularly like among like Black families and in the Black community. I'm not saying that we're all the same, but like it's a cultural practice where if you're young, you don't get to express your anger. You don't get to be angry. So then what happens? You grow up having suppressed this anger for so long, and then you're an adult and you're allowed to do it now, but you do it in really destructive and not great ways. And it's a struggle that I have, but at the same time, as much as I struggle with that, I also kind of enjoy it because it's one of the few times where I feel very powerful. I feel, you know what I mean? Like I feel like, this sounds terrible, and I probably sound like a terrible person, but it's true. Like it's hard for me to give up that sense of feeling empowered, right? And so, and that's a big part of like, I think a lot of the stories are about people who have felt disempowered for so long, and then they get a sense of power, but at what cost? And how do you navigate that? Like, how do you balance that? Or like, Rachel, like you were saying, you want to feel something, you want to be hurt, but then it's like, where do you draw that line where it's too far? Where are you going too far? But at the same time, you kind of enjoy it, again, people.
That's when I go back and I read my Goosebumps, because yes, I did just buy a whole bunch of them from Half Price Books. But I'm
That's awesome.
Like, I take it to a little too far for myself, and I don't blame the authors. That's me. And then I dial it back.
And then
it's funny you mentioned the Goosebumps, because I've been thinking about going back and buying some, and I used to, so this is another big influence, but I don't often talk about Christopher Pike. I read every Christopher Pike book out there. I read
the Point Line books.
The Point Line books. What was that collection he had? The story called like The Black Walker. That was crazy. That story was crazy. But anyway, I read all the Christopher Pike books, and like I really want to go back and buy like the original cover. I know they're super expensive now, and I regret like getting rid of them, but I had all those books. But that's, so like when I go too far, I was trying to read, I hope I get through it. I was trying to read Matthew Stokoe's Cows, and y'all.
I wish y'all could see the look on her face if you're just listening. Can I tell you that's one of my favorite books?
Here's the thing. I love that book, but I'm struggling trying to finish it. But I don't blame you, because the first half of that book, I was like, I relate to this character, and I don't know what that says about me as a person.
Right?
That's alarming. I related to that character. I relate to the protagonist.
You feel such empathy for him, and yet you watch him do these things. But you can, again, the cognitive empathy kicks in, and you're like, based on everything else that I've seen going on, and what I'm also picking up from your mental health and how it is right now. I get why I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and oh baby, like you need a real mommy.
You need a real mom.
Yeah,
you need some
not
real,
the talking cow. And then just like the horror that he presents from other humans and their relationship with the animals. There's allegory in there too. But
yes, absolutely. But that book is so good. I haven't finished it yet,
brutal.
But that book it's so good. It's so brutal, and it's so like just unflinching, and its depiction of like again, like of just like human suffering, like people. I think that's the thing for me. It's just like people are suffering, and they don't know. Even one thing that I felt really like it almost alarmed me was the main character in Cows. Like I was like, of all the stuff that's also going on with this person, I also was like, this person, I mean, not to diagnose them, but I'm like, I felt like a lot of ADHD vibes, because when you're on like that spectrum and you're just like trying to figure out ways to get out of a terrible situation, and you just can't, like your brain has no idea how to get out of that situation. But to somebody else who's looking in on you, they're like, well, why can't you just, everybody else does it, why can't you do it? And I just thought that was so brilliant. I thought that was just that hit me in my heart.
It's the dichotomy between what's wrong with you versus what happened to you, and the effect that actually has on people. I think this is actually a really great example of something that Rachel was talking about earlier in how we read horror, because there are people who will hear us talk about cows, and they'll hear us having this conversation and be like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Where did you even get all that? Because for them and their brains and who they are and how they've been wired, where they've come from, what they see is the animal cruelty, the ridiculous, the surrealism, the abuse, like all of that. Whereas there are a different set of brains out there who look at that. If Matt Stocko could listen to us talking about this and be like, oh, okay.
Who knows if that's even what he was going for?
No, but we find it there because to us it is there. When you read horror on that deeper level, you realize just how not absurd it is sometimes.
I mean, like I know, and like I'm not a big, I don't want to say like I'm not, I don't want to say I'm not a fan of extreme horror, because like I am, but I know a lot of people feel like that genre is just full of ridiculousness and absurdity, and it's, you know, not serious. And to be fair, like for some people that is true. Like that's the intent, which is perfectly fine. Sometimes it's fun.
Exactly.
But a lot of that stuff, like I find that, like I not too many months ago, I finished Gone to See the Riverman.
Triana? Oh,
yes.
Well, can we talk about modern transgressive fiction?
I mean, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it. But at the same time, like when you read it, like you know it's coming. But that book messed me up. I was pleasantly surprised at how that book is amazing. That book is so good.
Oh,
yeah, I have to read more Triana, but I think that's one of those books where people, you know, you think you know what's happening, you think you know what this book's about, oh, it's extreme horror or whatever, but like, whew, that was a good one. That was a good one. The book made me, like, I'm tired just thinking about it. I'm pretty sure after I read it, I had to go take a nap because I was just like, I'm exhausted.
If you don't have And the Devil Cried in your TBR, I will
put it there.
Woo!
I will put it there. And I also want to read what's the Volpe? Left. I know it's Daniel Volpe.
Left to You.
I want to read that. That sounds. Yeah. I see Rachel. Yeah.
When you go back and listen to this one, Rachel talked about this one in the intro. Okay.
It is one of my favorites, up there with you for the year. But yeah, it's that's an emotional one too. That, like, I had to nap after that one.
Wow. Yeah. Some of them, that's like a different rating scale. Like I needed to take a nap after reading this book. Like.
Yes, those are the ones that I've classified as filthy heart murder.
Yes.
That is just
filthy heart murder.
Filthy heart murder. How very dare. Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, the heart murder.
You know what, Paula? We just gave you a lot of smart people questions. So now it's time for the dumb shit.
Love dumb shit.
It's actually not all dumb shit. It's some like relatively smart people stuff mixed in with some dumb shit. I'm really the one who's gonna bring the dumb shit. I'm gonna let Rachel stay smart. Rachel, hit her with the first of the season 2 rapid fire force.
Oh my goodness. All right. So if someone were to write a memoir about you, what would it be called?
Oh my. Probably just Why. Why? Why? The Paula D. Ashe story. That's
Why?
Why question mark or why period?
There is a different vibe there.
There is a different vibe. Oh God, I'm. You know what? I'm gonna period.
Yeah.
Period. Just why?
Why?
Yeah, that's
the Paula D. Ashe.
That's my lane.
Why? I like it. I like it a lot.
I would read that book. So if I sat you down and I put an explosive collar on your neck, battle royale style, and I told you had 30 minutes to write a book for me and Christina's kids and Rue, or the collar would explode and your head would blow up, what would that children's book be called? And what would it be about?
Like my actual literal nightmare is somebody asking me to write children's fiction. Like I'm not even kidding. That's my actual nightmare, because I'm like, I can't tell a story without something horrible happening. So it will probably be about like ghosts, like nice ghosts. That's nice ghosts. It'll be about some nice ghosts who do nice things.
And what would it be called?
Nice kids.
Nice ghosts do nice things
ghosts
for nice kids.
You know, that leaves the door open for like naughty ghosts for naughty kids.
For naughty kids. There now I got a series going. Boom. Thanks, Rachel.
You
Checks
know
in the
what?
mail.
A nice ghosts for do nice things for nice kids is all well and good, but quite honestly, in my family, we would pick up naughty ghosts to naughty
ghosts
things
for
to naughty
yeah.
kids first.
Yeah. Sir,
Because I feel like I can use that as a teaching tool.
Sure. Yeah.
I love to use trauma as an educational tool for my children.
That was the 80s. Come on. That's when
Girl, I grew up in the Satanic Panic too.
Yeah.
When I was 8 years old, The Exorcist 3 came out, and you know what I thought? I thought I was possessed by the devil. Thank you. So, okay, so here's a
You
real
and me both.
story. Around that same time, I fell off of a swing backwards and had a concussion that probably went undiagnosed. And around that same time, I started having auditory hallucinations that eventually went away, but it was probably because of a mild concussion brain injury. So that injury happened to me, and then The Exorcist 3 came out, and all of the like commercials and like the media attention it was getting because I had this injury. I straight up thought I was possessed by the devil. You're welcome. There's a little of my childhood trauma for y'all. Wait till I tell you guys the cockroach story at some
Oh my God.
Terrified. The title alone is yikes.
But
Yikes.
yeah.
So one of the things when I was growing up, my mom I don't know why she did this. I guess she thought like, I don't know what, but my mom told me like scene by scene, my mom told me the complete plot to The Exorcist, but she also told me the complete plot to The Entity. Do you know that movie?
The one where it sexually assaults the female protagonist. Yes.
Why would you tell a child that? What? So
because trauma is a fantastic educational.
I was a very kid. We now all know why, because I was fucking terrified.
This is why you don't interact with spirits in your home, Paula.
You're gonna come and get
they'll touch your special places.
Why would you tell a child that? Anyway.
Woo! 1980s!
Woo! No 80s.
It was a strange time.
Oh my God, was it
very
ever?
strange. It was very strange. It was a messed up time, and it's so funny, like with all the nostalgia for the 80s, with like Stranger Things and stuff like that, which is cool. I love Stranger Things, like that's my show, but like it's just so like it was not like that. You know what I mean? Like that's the chipper, upbeat, wholesome version of the 80s. That's not the version of the 80s I grew up in for sure.
Oh my God, no way, man.
Mm-mm.
Ooh, Rachel. Hit her with number 3 before the 80s consume us. God.
All right.
Rachel.
Which of your characters is your least favorite and why?
Goodness, probably the father from Bereft.
Ah.
Yeah, I hate that motherfucker. So your kid is in the room. I'm so sorry, Marian. Oh my God.
He can't hear shit. I mean, he just heard me say shit, but it's
right.
We're good moms.
We're good moms. But yeah, the father from
I
Bereft.
just laughed so hard I peed myself a little bit. Sorry, I'm pregnant. So much. The father from Bereft. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's been recorded forever. Oh man, this has been a special day, y'all.
Ooh, yay. Oh yeah.
Day and a special time. I don't know how to recover from that.
You still have one more question.
I know.
think, right?
And it's the best one yet.
I do want to add one thing though. The father from Bereft is based on a real person, not a real person that I know personally, but it is that story. I know earlier one of y'all asked about a story that kind of like flipped that switch, and there was, you know, the Dahmer and the Likens case, and there's also a story of an Austrian businessman by the name of Joseph Fritzl. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about?
In his basement bunker, and he put his daughter down there.
And raped her day after day after day and gave birth to 8 kids, I believe.
Yes.
Oh God.
When I learned about that story broke me, and that's the reason why I wrote Bereft, because I couldn't handle, like, just hearing about it. Like it really, that story messed me up, knowing that really happened to somebody, and so that is where Bereft came from.
Isn't it mind-boggling? I can't even imagine. Like, you hear stories like that and it seems surreal. And there are so many times where I catch myself reading books and I'm like, oh, well, there's psychological safety net there because that could never happen. And then you hear a story from real life about like Joseph Fritzl and you're like, oh, wait
a minute. Like, this should happen. And the thing that like, I think the mom, like his wife, like she still lived in the house and she said she never knew. And I'm like, how do you keep, how is that possible? But
we have amazing defense mechanisms.
Yes,
right. We sure do. Yep. Speaking of that, if you suddenly came across an angry Michael Myers in the wilderness, which trauma response would you default to? Fight, flight, freeze. I'm going to add an extra one, or fawn.
Do you think fawn would work for Michael Myers?
That's it. You know, I honestly, okay, so initially I would go through all of them. Like, let's be real. I would cycle through all of them. Because flight would be first. I would try to run, I would run my black ass away because
we don't
mess with Michael Myers. We don't mess with Michael Myers in my community. And
she's like, first of all, I wouldn't be in the wilderness.
I wouldn't be. Like, I would run first. I don't think I would do fight because Michael Myers is pretty unstoppable. You know, he has the devil's eyes. He's the shape.
Well, if you're running, I feel like it's probably a good choice anyways. Yeah. Benetti was good the same way. He was like, I'm gonna run. He was like, this isn't even a good question. The
guy in my car and drive away.
Yeah, he literally takes like 3 steps a minute.
Like, he always shows up right where you like you you can drive however long away, but then you get there and he's fucking standing outside in the parking lot. So I don't know.
Materializes.
It's just right. He just materializes somewhere out of thin air. So I don't know, man. Fuck Michael Myers. I kind of hate him.
I both love him and hate him.
Yeah.
I'm like, why won't you just die?
Just die. Like,
what more are you?
Like, you have to be tired. Like, that's the other thing too. Like, exhausted. I can't imagine how tired Michael Myers is. Like, he's always just walking around, chasing people, stabbing people with harpoons and stuff. Like, just, I don't know, man. Just take a break.
Have a nap.
Self-care, Mike.
Go get some Godiva chocolate, sit down, have a bubble bath. Not you, Michael Myers.
That sounds good.
Like, I love talking the bubble bath. Absolutely. Sign me up.
Oh, right, Paula. Thank you so much for doing this with us today. Please tell us that you have more stuff coming soon, because Rachel and I will die if you don't. Is there anything you can
I-
email me? I need my fix.
So this is so I'm working on something. I think I've mentioned it before online. So myself, Judith Sonnet, and Christy Aldrich.
Yes!
Yes, I know.
I love Judith.
Ah!
Oh, she's so good. She's so good. She's so good. So me, Judith Sonnet, Christy Aldrich. Christy also makes book covers that are incredible. She's an incredible writer. And so we are all doing a collection of 3 novellas called Women Are From Hell. And so it's each individually, we're each working on our own novella. And that's supposed to come out sometime in November, I believe, late November. And I'm still working on mine because I am the slowest writer in the world. I'm just very slow about it. And I wish that I could write faster. And I can't, I don't know why, but I haven't accepted that part about myself. So that is coming. I have a few short stories out that have on sub to different places. And so if they get in, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I have a lot of stuff like in the works. It's just a matter of sitting down and writing it. So that's always the difficult part. But yeah, once those ERCs are available for those sorts of things, I will definitely send them y'all's way. Because yeah. But yeah, so that's some of the stuff I have. I have some other stuff that could be that's very likely in the future in some bigger kind of venues, but we're it's still in the planning stages. So just I am it's hopefully gonna happen. So yeah, I'll leave that.
If people would like to reach out to you and touch base with you, where's the best place online for them to do that? If you
The
feel
best place
comfortable.
online for them to do that is sadly Twitter. Because Twitter is, it's Twitter, but Twitter, so it's just at Paula D Ashe, is where you can reach me. I'm pretty approachable and friendly, I think. And I need to have a website and I just don't because I'm lazy. But Twitter's fine. Twitter works.
Honestly, I feel like between social media, Goodreads, and Amazon, having a standalone website is not as valuable as it used to be.
It just
like
seems
it's nice.
Yeah,
but
and with the what is that thing called, like Card or whatever, where you can just it's basically a website with just your links on it. Like I don't know.
Linktree, yeah,
Linktree, like stuff like that. Like I don't know. Like I tried to make a website and it made me so frustrated that I just gave up because I was just like, I don't care. I don't know. So, but Twitter is good. Twitter works.
Excellent. So for more information on Paula, please come join all 3 of us in that Mothers of Mayhem official Facebook group.
Yeah.
I did just rejoin the Twitters. Rachel, I don't know if you saw that post, but if you're on the Tweety Tweets, follow me.
I am surely not on the
Because
Twitter.
I suddenly realized how much is actually happening on Twitter and that I probably should go there again.
Oh, it's too much of a dumpster fire for me. I just can't.
I don't blame you. I really don't blame you. I don't blame you at all, Rachel. It's some of the stuff I'm just like, I try to keep my shit very curated. Like I try to I stay in my lane and I stay there. So
that's how I try to approach all social media for the most part. I just want everybody to be happy and to understand that I'm a nice lady who just wants everyone to like her. I'm sorry. And don't be mad at me. Please don't hate me. I just am what I am. I'm sorry. I love all of you. On our Facebook group, you can find links to our mom merch store. Yes, we have a merch store.
You got a merch store? That's awesome.
We do, where you can find like all kinds of weird stuff. And We have the ultimate fan community reading soundtrack playlists. So if
Ooh,
you
so
like
good.
Sorrow, you like Splatterpunk, you like the ghosty stuff, I got playlists up there for everything. Every mood reading vibe, I got playlists for them, especially the Spotify ones. Every time I
Yes.
find a new song that I think fits one of the vibes, I automatically add them. So they are updating constantly.
And they are amazing.
Yeah. I was a music major. I like to think that I have a decent taste. I was a music therapist before I became a nurse.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
I was such an emo girl, such a sad girl in my late teens and early college years. I followed Tori Amos up and down the East Coast. I have
Sure.
Tori Amos lyrics tattooed on my body. That is like how hardcore, like, life is pain.
You don't even understand how much I love Tori Amos.
Oh my God.
I know.
Seriously, Paula, we were born to be best friends with each other.
The original version of Modern Night Hill, I couldn't do it because they didn't want to pay for it, but I had the original kind of opening epigram was the lyrics to Mother by Tori Amos. That was the I know.
I have lyrics from her B-side song Mary tattooed on my body.
Yeah.
She was my everything for a while there.
Yeah. Big same.
Yep. In the community group, you can also get exclusive information, content. We have giveaway opportunities all the time, plus so much more. You can always send your questions, comments, pictures of dildos for Christina, memes of my arch enemy, Zach Baggins. Fucking hate that guy. To our email address, momextremepodcast@gmail.com. That's m.o.m.extremepodcast@gmail.com. If you are listening rather than watching on the YouTubes, go to our Anchor homepage. It's anchor.fm/Mothers of Mayhem podcast. I think it's something like that. Google it, you'll find it. Leave us a voice message. You might be surprised you can hear your own voice lead into one of these ridiculous episodes that we do from time to time. That content is an exclusive bonus only found on pod streaming platforms. It was a lot of fun last season. Finally, thank you to Miss Paula D. Ashe, as well as to singer-songwriter Amigo the Devil, for allowing me to use his song Hungover in Jonestown as our theme song. Could not have found something with a better vibe. And until next time, Rachel, you get to do the classic outro. Until next time, go and raise some hell children.
Make your weird book mommies proud.
Paula, I love you so much. I wish we were neighbors. I would be at your house every day. You would be like, girl, get the fuck out my home. Go home. You have a family. Bye.
Life is a joke, and death is the punchline. Oh, la 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 la.